What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deborah Royale YouTube channel. Today, we are talking through the Tennessee Titans. We are here with another franchise fix. We're going to go through everything from free agency to potential cut candidates to also a 7-round mock draft. We did a full 7 rounds this time. And so we're going to talk through all of that. We're going to get the Titans to the playoffs. I don't know if we've done that here, but we're going to get them to be better, and we're gonna at least see if Will Levis is a thing. So stick with us through the intro. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll catch you on the other side. All right. The Titans have had an interesting offseason already. They obviously had a coaching change. Brian Callahan is in there now. He's spoken about what this iteration of the offense will be, and it will be a version of the Cincinnati Bengals offense with his own spin on that. Randy, what do you make of that, I guess? Because they don't really have the players to run the Bengals offense at this moment.
I think that would be the Bengals offense, but they'll run the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
That's
I think that's right.
that's his variation. He comes
Yeah.
from an offensive line, coach family. Those we know they want to run the ball. So
Yeah. I think that's right. They have a new defensive coordinator as well, Denard Wilson. He's spoken about how he wants to play an attacking style. So it's going to look similar, I think, to what Brian Flores's defense looked like last year for Minnesota. The good thing is that I think Tennessee is positioned better to have defensive backs that can make that happen. And we're going to we're going to add some pieces to that secondary. We are also going to add a ton of pieces into that front seven because it's pretty critical for this defense to function. This defense is taking a lot of swings at certain places. Specifically, they have a ton of corners, but they're about to cycle through. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into cut candidates, but Randy, there's really not much here. Why don't you walk us through that in the current salary cap?
yeah, so their effective number is 69.7 million. If you look at the sites, it's going to be just under 75.5 million of cap room with the cap update. But the reason we're not really covering cut candidates is because they don't have a lot, and most of them are very minor, like 1 million to 2.5 million. The major one there would be Andre Dillard, who is currently a backup tackle. But for 2.5 million, they have a backup tackle. You're really not getting that on the market right now of that caliber, even though Dillard isn't phenomenal by any means. But it makes more sense to keep him. You have some restructure stuff with mainly Hopkins. I don't know why you would restructure with, almost 70 million in cap space. So they're just going to play with what they got.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if they're going to run some iteration of the Bengals offense, they need a player that can catch the football. And currently, DeAndre Hopkins is the best one to do that. Let's get over to some housekeeping, though, because there are some players that they have that I think are worth retaining. I'm going to just dive into this one. Terrell Edmonds, first one that we're keeping, 2 years, $6 million, so a little $3 million per. He's kind of bounced around, but I think he played some good ball down the stretch for the Titans last year. Worth keeping around, especially when, like we talked about, they need good secondary play. I think he has shown that he can solidify that, or at least be a third safety that can rotate in and be impactful that way. Azeez Al-Shaair, 3 years, 20.1 million. Once again, this linebacking crew is going to be active. They're going to be blitzing with their linebackers. Azeez was pretty good last year, and so I think it's worth keeping him around. And then on the other side of the ball, Aaron Brewer, 3 years, 20 million. You have to lock up your center spot. We're going to talk through. We're going to bring in another center as well as just a backup. But Aaron Brewer looks like he's good enough to be the starter. He had some up and down moments last year, I will say, but I think a lot of that was partly due to the guard play around him. Bringing him back seems like a pretty good no-brainer. And then Danico Autry, 1 year, 7.25 million. Autry was good for them last year, and while this defense is going to be a little bit different, Autry, I believe, was their leader in sacks last year. Randy, that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So you bring him back, and I think they're still going to run out some iteration of 3-4. It's going to be a little more multiple, but Autry is a perfect player for that. And then we're tendering Jack Gibbons, Marlon Davidson, and Julius Chestnut. Chestnut's just some depth, I think, in knowing that Derrick Henry's not coming back, we have to at least have some depth in that running back room as a fail safe. And so those are the things that we would do. Jack Gibbons was really good as a starting linebacker last year. I think I would say that he was their second most complete linebacker behind Alshire. And so you bring him back, you get a little bit of depth, even though we're going to add to that room as well. Randy, anything to add on the housekeeping front?
No, mainly that they also, in my opinion, could bring back, wide receiver wise, you could bring back Westbrook Akine. He might get a little bit more elsewhere. He didn't really do a lot for you. And then the other major one would be Sean Murphy Bunting, just to get corner depth, starting corner for you last year. You have a bunch of slot corners on the roster right now. He's also more of a slot corner, but you need depth, and he'll only cost about $4 million.
Yeah, that was a weird signing when they brought him in, just
Yeah,
based on that.
it was a desperate signing that I would say not worked out, but nothing else besides maybe McCreary at slot has worked out. So
right, and he battled injuries and things like that. That corner room certainly has its fair share of injuries with Caleb Farley there as well. Before we move on to free agency and the mock draft, I do just want to quickly mention our Patreon, patreon.com/theDebbyRoyale. We've got a lot of stuff coming over there. Discord is popping as usual. NFL draft time is a really fun time in the Discord. It's just $5 a month. We're working on another big college football guide with news coming out about that here soon. So join today. It's $5 a month, patreon.com/theDebbyRoyale. All right, free agency. We got active. We got active in free agency. Randy, why don't you start us off with all the moves that we made?
Okay. So John Feliciano to compete for starting right guard, 1 year, $2 million. George Fant, 1 year, $5 million to compete / probably be our starting right tackle. He's played some good snaps in the last couple of years. I think he's one of the best value to be a short-term starter. DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 1 year, $1 million. Cheap deal, prove-it deal. He's been bouncing around, but this gives him a place where he has a chance to shine as an outside weapon and possibly kick returner. Jordan Whitehead is one of our bigger signings. 2 years, $12 million at safety. You could have spent more there, all these free agents on the market. I'd rather let the other team spend the money there, and let's get a cheap, impactful, heavy-hitting safety in Whitehead. Chidobe Awuzie, 2 years, $20 million at corner. A guy that could play every style of defense at corner, but he's not elite at any of the styles. But when we're playing a multiple front on the defense and we need good cover corners, he's probably the best fit for the Titans, especially for this money, $10 million a year. And then some other smaller ones, Oren Burks at linebacker, 2 years, $4 million per year. Darrell Taylor, 2 years, $4.5 million per year to be an edge rusher helper. Javon Kinlaw, 1 year, $5.5 million to be nose tackle / D tackle. And then Will Clapp and Shelby Harris to be backup center and rotational D tackle / D end.
Yeah, and we got those around $4 million a piece.
Yeah,
what did we say Clapp was?
Clapp will probably be about $3 million roughly, just because of versatility. And then Shelby Harris probably saying 3 to 4. You might have to outbid somebody, but with the money that we have, an extra $1 million is nothing to us for good snaps.
Yeah. The reason we were up in the air, we initially had signed Gerald Everett to compete for that tight end job, but then we went back on that because we think that Chigakonkwo can do what this. I mean, if you look at what the Bengals have gotten out of their tight end room over the last few years, it's they don't need a whole lot from that position. That this offense doesn't traditionally use that, and Josh Wiley was not a great run blocker last year, but we do add in the draft, so we pivoted off that. Grab some backup rotational guys that we needed more than Everett for sure.
And Chig is a better tight end than the Bengals have had in the last 5 years, weapon-wise at least. Not a great blocker, but Everett's a worse blocker. So why bring in the same piece? It just didn't make sense in the once we sat down with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into the NFL mock draft. So like I said, full 7 rounds. before we get into this, the Titans are pretty much locked into one of two positions, right? So it's either wide receiver or it's offensive tackle. We both did a mock draft. I think you can make an argument that they could go a different position if they traded back.
That was my little hesitation there.
Right, which I think is certainly on the table. It's not one that I think is mocked a lot, but I think that with those wide receivers and Joe Alt potentially all being on the board, there's some justification for both those positions. And I don't know if you can entice them to move out. One quote I do want to mention, because we took it in a way where, Brian Callahan brought his dad over. He's able to get the most out of an offensive line. Getting Joe Alt and getting him coached by Mr. Callahan, one of the greatest offensive line coaches of all time, would be something to see. But they also specifically talked about, Rand Carthen talked about how they want to get faster. They need to get weapons. They need to, kind of make plays, because they didn't have that last year. And so I say that to lead into the first pick here. We ended up going the wide receiver route. Round 1, pick 7, Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. They talked about speed. I think Malik Neighbors is a popular pick here, and it's kind of my favorite fit. But I also think that teams are going to be in love with Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors is often gone before pick 7 with how boards shake out. So Rome Odunze comes in and is immediately probably the number one option, I would say. I think that you can argue that. I think you can argue that Odunze's got more juice. I think Hopkins probably commands more targets, but I think Odunze makes the most out of his targets from day one.
100%, but it's a good situation for him where you have a veteran, top end, high money, guy that doesn't drop the ball on the other side. So to take away a lot of the attention, allow Rome to grow into the NFL this year.
Yeah, for sure. Where we go, oh, look at that. We have a trade down. Randy, can you talk through the trade? Because I did not write that down.
Yeah, so this trade that I did is with the Rams, and this is for the Rams to trade up to get a quarterback of the future, most likely Bo Nix or Penix, but getting a quarterback to be their guy in 2 years on the roster to learn behind this coaching tree, and they can figure it all out. Doesn't have to be a long-term guy, but a quarterback of the future. Titans are in a good spot to where a lot of the teams picking before them will be making those picks to get positions they desperately need that should be on the board there, where the Titans have the flexibility to move down because they don't have a third-round pick currently until this deal. So I have the Titans trading the 38th pick and 25 5th to the Rams for the 52nd pick, the 83rd pick, and a 25 4th next year. So basically pick swap next year and a second and a third for a better second to move up. What is that, 14 spots?
Yeah. That's a good deal. So and then because we didn't go the Joe Alt route, we ended up drafting Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. We wrote down that pronunciation. If you follow the channel, we've said that dude's name multiple times. We have to look it up every time. Can't make that one stick. But this is one of those, like, okay, we have a developmental tackle and we have this great coach. Let's see what we can make out of him. I think he could start at left or right tackle. And I think that there's a real path for him, even after our signings, to start week 1 for them because of all the tools that we've seen from him. So,
and Callahan's, long history of developmental tackles playing better than they should the first year, the latest of which is DeJuan Jones this year before he got hurt, a guy that played well above what his draft value was coming in. So I'd be pretty confident that Kingsley could give you starter reps this year, even with the George Fant signing for 1 year to be your bridge guy.
Yeah, for sure. All right, walk us through pick 83 now, Randy.
Yeah, so Christian Mahogany, interior offensive lineman, mostly guard, from Boston College. Again, we get a blessing to get a third-round pick here in the trade back. We got our tackle of the future. let's get our guard of the future. We signed, again, another aging veteran. We have 2 guys on the roster that haven't performed that we currently are going to be having fighting for the right guard position in Daniel Brunskill and Dylan Radins. I'd rather bring in another guy to compete with that. Between them 3, we're going to have a starter. And that's all I really care about. And now our offensive line, we brought in 2 veterans. We brought back our center. We got a backup center. I really do. We know we have a starting left guard of the future. Petit Friere has had some good snaps, but bringing in Kingsley and Christian Mahogany, you're really setting yourself up for the future with great coaching staff to help them grow.
Yeah. We'll talk about it once we get to the new starting lineup, but like this offensive line is completely retooled in a spot where it would be difficult for all of these players to be bad.
Yeah.
And so that's
And when you double tap with a couple of vets and then like this, we can go into the draft next year and be like, okay, well, Petit Friere hasn't worked out. Kingsley hasn't worked out. Brewer struggled. All right, so now we need another tackle. We need a center. Whatever actually happens, we're set up for the future.
right, for sure. All right, here at 106 in round 4, we took Johnny Dixon, the corner out of Penn State. Long player. I think this is one of those you have to get some more depth, especially at outside corner. I think Dixon has the ability to play outside. I think you can make an argument that he was the better Penn State corner last year. And so I think there are certainly a lot of favorites. If you do a mock draft simulator, initially when Randy did his mock, Cam Hart was there. I think his stock's rising too much following the combine
Yeah.
and following the Senior Bowl. I just don't think he's going to be there. So this next tier of corners is still good, and I think Dixon is one of those guys that could rotate in as early as year 1.
Yeah, I will say Dixon is a good pick here, but I do think Hart, with it being pick 106, so we're like 5-6 picks into the 4th round. I think there's a strong chance he's there, but I do agree there's a good chance he goes late round 3 now.
Yeah. I mean, that dude has just been on a trajectory upward since the season ended, and really,
and he's well coached.
right, exactly right. All right, pick 144, Randy. Where'd we go?
Yeah, we both same thing. We both picked running backs here. We went with Christians, Jace McClellan, running back from Alabama. Really, we just need another shot at this running back room. I think Tyjae Spears has shown a lot of good things this last year. Haskins, we know, can be a bit of a bruiser when we need it. Chestnut can be a good fill-in piece. But to get another potential starter in McClellan in the 5th round, a guy that can give us valuable snaps, we're not having to pay any running back this year while we rebuild and say goodbye to the guys who carried our franchise for better part of a decade. I think it's a good idea to get a good quality back that can give us pitch counts.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of following that same train, we talked about the tight end position and adding to the room isn't a necessity, but also when a player like Brevin Spanford is still on the board here in the 6th round, I think there's a real shot that he becomes an every down player. He's one of my favorite tight ends to watch in this class because I think that he is a good enough blocker to stay on the field and kind of an underrated pass catcher. He's 6'7", I believe. Tight end out of Minnesota. I think that when you look at the tight end depth, this isn't a player that can play on special teams probably, which is an interesting route to take here on day 3. However, it is more of a developmental. I think this kid can play, and he's a different flavor than Chigakonkwo as well, and Josh Wiley, really. So we took a shot at tight end here and kind of just solidified the tight end room.
Yeah. You want to go with the next one? Because I really haven't watched him at all.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. We double tapped Washington here, and at pick 218 in the 7th round, we're taking Edefwanu Lafosio. I've watched this kid actually for 3 years now. 2 years ago, I thought he was gonna declare. He didn't. Last year, he got hurt. I believe either in the off season or right at the end of the season before, and so he was really working back into form. And then last year when he was on the field, this is a player that fits this like defensive scheme incredibly well. He flies all over the field. He can rush the passer from the linebacker position. He is an incredible athlete. If you look at, I believe his relative athletic score was somewhere above 9. So crazy athlete. I do think he'll be available because of the injury questions and because of some of the inconsistent work as a coverage linebacker. But I think for this defense, this is a great pick that this kid can also play special teams. So rounding out the roster with guys that can do that.
Yeah, and in the 7th round, getting a guy that can fly on special teams that in the future can give you rotational snaps at the linebacker position is always a good idea. And to finish it off, Devin Leary, quarterback, Kentucky, to pair with Will Levis. But we know Malik Willis isn't going to be a long-term backup for this team, just because they're going to give Levis the team and give him all the chance to succeed. And, he's going to take the opportunity, that being Malik Willis, once his contract's up, to take a shot somewhere else, just because he never is going to get the opportunity here. So to get a long-term backup that has a chance to be a high-value replacement on Leary, a guy that I think could do all the little things that you need from a backup and hopefully not commit a lot of turnovers, but he's got a lot of room to grow. But in the 7th round, getting your quarterback 3, you're not having to pay a veteran. I don't really see a lot of the veterans choosing to go here because they know they're not going to get a chance to start pretty much ever. So you're going to get either a low-value veteran or an upside rookie that could be your quarterback 2 for the future.
Yeah, but Malik Willis is done. I
won't say that, but he's done for the Titans.
Yeah, I think he's done overall. I just don't think he's very good, sadly. Okay, let's look at our new starting lineup. So Will Levis, Devin Leary at quarterback. At running back, we have Tajay Spears, Julius Chestnut, and Jason McClellan. Quite frankly, what's that?
It's just like you definitely think Malik Willis is done. You just didn't even feel like putting him on the graphic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you guys like Malik Willis. He can be not on this team. I was going to say James McClellan's probably your RB2 in this scenario, by the way. I just put him at 3 because he's a rookie. Wide receivers, we have Roma Dunze, we have DeAndre Hopkins, we have Treylon Burks, we have Kyle Phillips, we have Colton Dowell, we have Donovan Peoples-Jones. We have a ton of shots at wide receiver and more depth than they've had in a long, long time. One note I wanted to make, we didn't talk much about Treylon Burks, but moving him into the slot seems like a good decision. You can have a big slot that can, not face as much. Really, he wouldn't get any attention with DeAndre Hopkins and Roma Dunze on the field. So you kind of free him up, give him an opportunity to make something happen and really jumpstart his career. Randy, talk about the offensive line. We have so many offensive linemen.
Yeah, so you have
I put George Fant at left tackle.
On left. I would have George Fant at right with Petit Friere at starter. Just because I would trust them 2 over Radins. And I'm assuming Kingsley has a chance to start, but either way, with those 4, you're almost guaranteed to have good snaps at the starting line. Obviously, you have your left guard of the future and Peter Skoronski, Aaron Brewer, Will Clapp are your centers, and John Feliciano and Christian Mahogany fighting for the right guard spot with Dylan Radins as well, I would say. So, again, is it a dominant offensive line? I would say no, but with this offensive line coach, getting 2 veterans that he can trust and 2 rookies that I think he can mold into very, very good starters for you alongside an already good starter. And, Petit Friere has kind of flipped sides. I think he's played really well. He's had mistakes, obviously, but I think you have a really above average offensive line that could be really good depending on how the rookies play.
Yeah. I think another iteration of this offensive line is that Kingsley wins that starting job at left tackle, and then you have just George Fant starting at right tackle, and then you don't have to worry about any of that.
And I do think Petit Friere could kick it to guard if he needed.
Right. And I think Radins can too.
Yeah.
I will say he's a great run blocker, not good enough as a pass blocker, and that's why we went so hard on the offensive line. There's a reason we had to do that, and that's because all of those players that we just mentioned were on the offensive line last year. They didn't do good enough. On the defensive side of the ball, our front seven here: Danico Autry, Javon Kinlaw, Jeffrey Simmons, Keandre Coburn, and Quentin Bohanna as your nose tackle backups behind Kinlaw, but also I think they'd all rotate in. I think Coburn flashed quite a bit. So did Bohanna last year. We brought in Shelby Harris to rotate in as well, and then DK McClendon. Corner, we have Chidobe Awuzie. We have Caleb Farley. We have Johnny Dixon. We have Roger McCreary, which isn't on this graphic because he's mostly a slot player, and the slot corner didn't make it onto this graphic. The linebackers, Arden Key, Daryl Taylor, Harold Landry, Rashad Weaver is your like rushing outside linebackers. That is a solid group. That is a really, really good group, actually. Your inside linebackers, you've got Aziz Al-Shair, Adefonu Lafosio, Oren Burks, Jack Gibbons, Jojo Doman. Fine group. And then safeties, Jordan Whitehead, Terrell Edmonds, Amani Hooker, and Elijah Molden. Playoff team or no?
It's a tough division.
Yep.
I'm not going to say playoff team simply because we need to see this defense work with this coordinator and how he's going to use him. But I do think his history shows that this could be a really good defense if the corner play steps up. And then the offense, it depends on Levis. I think we put enough shots at the offensive line that it'll work. I don't know, if it's top, if it's 10 to 20, I think that's where the range will be. Just first year, obviously. And then you got, in my opinion, 3 really good receivers. Kyle Phillips, I love, obviously. I mean, he's not a big slot, so he might not be perfect for this offense, but I know he can catch the ball when he's healthy. And DPJ is a good shot. I think you give Will Levis every chance to succeed here, and you kind of know your future.
Exactly. I think that's
the issue is you have 3 really good young quarterbacks in your division.
Yeah. But I think putting all of this around Will Levis and finding out what he is the goal this year. I don't think the goal is playoffs. I think the goal is, do we have a quarterback or not? And, I actually think back to like Chicago with Justin Fields last year. I think that answer was yes to that team, even though they didn't put enough around him. They're drafting Caleb Williams. The Titans will not be drafting Caleb Williams. They will get a very good player at 107. It's a really great time to be a Titans fan, I feel, because I think the vibes are much better without Vrabel. I think Vrabel was a good coach, but I think it's on to a new era, and I think that Titans fans should be excited.
Vrabel did his best with his era. That team was gone. I think he arguably was the best coach in the market, and I'm glad he didn't take a job, honestly. Yeah. I think it was smart of him to take a year to retool. But, man, that team that we just built should be good, and it truly is based on Levis because that defense can be solid attackers with some good takeaway potential. But when you're that attacking, you're going to give up big plays. So that's, Cowboys, Vikings, Steelers. Like, you have to be able to put up points with that kind of defense. And if you can't, you're not going to win.
You're in trouble. Yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you think if you're watching this as a Titans fan, or if not, drop a comment. Let us know how you would do this differently. I know Joe Alt is a common mock draft, and that's a viable pick as well. Like I said, the good thing, they're getting a very good player at the top of this draft, and they have a path forward.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video. What's up?
I was going to say, I would say quick, if you are taking Joe Alt, it's harder to trade down in the second because you want to get that elite receiver there.
Yeah.
So you're not getting that third round pick. It's a rough build, but it's still a good build that way. But this way you get to cover more bases.
Yeah. Either way, Will Levis has helped out. We learn our answer hopefully this year. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Make sure, like I said, you drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, like this video. We'll have more coming soon. We'll talk to you guys next time.